Hi, it's Dwyer. It's August 27th, 2023. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let me just say this diplomatically. Right? Not even from a self-interested point of view, right? Some people here watching this video had Dubois at a plus 700 or a plus 650, like I did, to win the fight, hedged with the fight not going the distance. Let me just say this. Now, I'm not alleging corruption. I'm not. We all make mistakes. But what I am saying is that this was a title unification match. Dubois goes into the fight with the WBA heavyweight title. Usyk has other belts. This was a major event. Now, it's going to have to be redone, in my opinion. At a minimum, this outcome needs to be changed to a no contest. That's at a minimum. Because while it's a foul to hit someone below the belt, right? Boxing's no different than the popular lexicon where you say, oh, that's hitting me below the belt. Well, that's clearly a foul. Here, Dubois, the WBA champion, throws the perfect punch. It's on the belt. Folks, it's right on the target. It's the perfect punch, and it's relatively early in the fifth round. Understand how perfect the punch is. On the American broadcast, you have a boxing Hall of Famer, Timothy Bradley, right? Tim not only knows boxing, he's in the Hall of Fame. And Bradley flatly says on the telecast that Dubois, who after the multi-minute stoppage, right, the multi-minute opportunity for Usyk, who's clearly hurt, who clearly can't continue, if he got up and tried to continue, understand Dubois would have more than half the round to finish him off. Right? This isn't a fight where there's not a lot of holding. It's not like Usyk's going to get up and hold on to Dubois. That's not Usyk's game. Usyk's throwing feints. Usyk is maintaining a pocket. In that fight, where Usyk goes down hard, and where a Hall of Famer on the telecast in real time calls it a legal punch, in that fight, I believe Dubois lifted Usyk's titles. If you're just looking at what happened, understand, I know there are many, and I've looked at some of the reports online, I know there are many who say, well, Usyk proved he was the champ after getting off the canvas. You know, boxing doesn't give you more of an opportunity than to get up within 10 seconds of being dropped. I'm sorry, but if you hit the canvas and you're unable to continue 10 seconds later, the fight is over. You don't get to the rest of the fight. I don't care, quite frankly, apart from forecasting future fights, I don't care what happened in the rest of the fight. The fight should have been called in the fifth round. The people who had bet scenarios with Dubois at 7-1 or 6.5-1 and higher, They should have gotten on that portion of their bet scenario, the 7-1 and the 6.5-1. Dubois should have figuratively gotten medals for the punch he threw. It's probably the best punch landed on Usyk in Usyk's career. I understand that Usyk after the fight said, I thought the punch was low. He gave interviews, including the interview the seconds out. Right? He doesn't have the angles we have. He's the guy getting hit. He doesn't have the angle that shows that Dubois hits him right on the belt line. Folks, it's a perfect punch. It should have ended the fight. Right? So in a fight of this magnitude, heavyweight unification, folks, the stakes don't get higher. Rightly or wrongly, the heavyweight division is the glamour division in boxing. Right? There are many out there who can go back to John L. Sullivan, who remember a heavyweight champ from the 19th century. Right? We know of Jack Johnson. We know of Jim Jeffries. We know of Jack Dempsey, Gene Tunney. You can come all the way down the line. Right? Joe Louis, etc. The heavyweight division is the glamour division. There are some huge paydays ahead involving many fighters who, quite frankly, are very deserving of shots at the heavyweight title. Had Dubois won this fight, ahead of him would have been, depending on how the contracts work out, depending on how the fights work out, a possible fight against Tyson Fury, a rematch against Usyk, a possible fight against the winner of Joshua Wilder, a possible fight against the King of Scotland. Right? Fights against countless people. Instead, what we have now is confusion. Understand, the first time you look at the tape, you know this punch is legal. It's clearly not below the belt line. It's clearly not. Now the referee, and he's an excellent ref, Pepon, he's an excellent ref. I've seen him in several fights. Immediately calls a stop to the action. That was unfortunate. Sometimes referees make mistakes. Then, of course, the situation is compounded. We see Usyk on the canvas. Folks, Usyk can't continue. Usyk would have been lucky to get to his feet. If he got to his feet, there's no way he would have lasted the rest of the round. Let's just say that there is a distinct possibility that Usyk would have stayed on the canvas if that punch was ruled legal. There's another distinct possibility that Usyk gets up, can barely stand, and Dubois, who's good at bouncing around the ring, would have finished him off with either another right hand to the body. Right? Body shots were bothering Usyk. Understand, Dubois also was successful in landing right uppercuts. So this fight either needs to be run back or the fight needs to be called a no contest. What can't happen is that a WBA champion who throws a perfect punch right on the belt line loses his title to the guy who hits the canvas and is clearly unable to continue at that moment in time. That can't happen. Right? Understand too, you've had big controversial moments in boxing. Right? Probably one of the biggest in the sport's history is the famous long count. right? Where Gene Tunney is on the canvas and Jack Dempsey is lingering around, and due to a recent rule change, Dempsey was supposed to go to a neutral corner. And of course, Tunney is able to have longer than 10 seconds on the canvas, gets up, ends up winning the fight. Right, folks? Just understand how bad this was by comparison. How long did Usyk have to recover? Folks, Usyk had minutes to recover. Minutes. If you look at the film of the punch, and I have films of the punch in my favorites folder, right? If you look at films of the punch, if there's any time where you're looking at the film in slow motion and you think that this punch could have been legitimate, if you have any doubt in your mind, any scintilla of doubt in your mind as to whether this punch was an illegal punch, then this result needs to be wiped off the books and a rematch ordered. If not an immediate rematch, then what they need to do is to say, okay, well, we have Ergovic, who I call the heir apparent. He's got to be encouraged by this film, right? Who's scheduled to fight Usyk. Say that the winner of that fight then has to fight Dubois. But understand, Dubois has to have another crack at Usyk's titles. At a minimum, Dubois needs to keep the title he had when he entered the ring. Now let's talk about the math of the fight. Dubois needs to work on having more come from his left side. Now let me say this. Usyk figures out that he can land straight rights on Dubois. Right? That's the punch that ultimately ends the fight a few rounds later. Now I've said this in other videos, let me say it here. When you're fighting a slick boxer like Usyk, you can't come in with a rabbit ear defense. I believe the Archie Moore defensive stance, right? Think Archie Moore, think Kenny Norton, think George Foreman, of having a hand here, having your right hand on the left side of your face, protecting your temple and protecting your chin. Right? I believe that that's necessary so that you can catch a straight right from an Usyk who is a southpaw. In other words, that right hand is Usyk's jab hand. It's Usyk's lead hand. More importantly, you're fighting a guy who's having a problem with body shots. You've got to mix up the body shots. Part of the body shots you throw should be your lead left if you're an orthodox fighter like Dubois. So the dilemma is, how do you throw your lead left without having Usyk go to town on your head, without having Usyk load up on that straight right, which Dubois had problems with? The solution is for Dubois, a guy who's not going to learn how to hide his head, right? He's a slugger. He's too tall. He's in his mid-20s. He's not going to learn how to tuck his head and, he's not going to suddenly be Floyd Mayweather. So what he needs to do is to figure out how to wrap, right? How to wrap that right hand around the left side of his face. Then he has to figure out how to, as Usyk, southpaw, tries to then switch to straight lefts. And these are the problems opponents of Usyk have. They have to pick their poison. He has to figure out how to not only have the hand here, but how to then turn his head and shoulder as he steps deeper in the pocket to throw left hooks to the body. Understand there has to have been a moment in this fight where Usyk, fighting Dubois, realized that Dubois was one-handed on body shots, right? As you watch the film, try to count Dubois' left hands to the body. Folks, they're close to non-existent, right? Dubois is trying desperately to land rights to Usyk's body and uppercuts to Usyk's body. Usyk, one of the reasons why he's a future Hall of Famer is Usyk can go right or left. If he knows you can only hit him in the body with your right hand, he's going to scoot away from it. But again, punchers only have to be right once. And Dubois was right in that 5th round. Right? The referee should have realized that a punch right on the belt line is a legal punch. What the press needs to do is to talk to Papon and try to figure out whether he mistakenly thought that the punch was below the belt line. It wasn't. Dubois threw the perfect punch and should have been rewarded. He should have left the ring with not only his belt, WBA belt, but he should have left with Usyk's belts. We should be having a conversation right here about how a bomb has just been dropped on the heavyweight division. We should be talking about how Dubois would do against Fury, against the winner of Joshua Wilder, against Martin Bucoli, the last King of Scotland. Right? Those are the kind of conversations we should be having. Right? How Dubois would do against Filip Ergovic. Instead, we're supposed to believe that Dubois, after that perfect punch, loses his title and deserves to lose to Usyk. I hope the powers that be in the heavyweight division do the right thing here, because I need for boxing to think about how long the controversy has lasted over that Tunney Dempsey long count. Right? I'm just telling people, this controversy here is going to last a long time if it's not corrected. Right? Usyk fought a great fight. Usyk wins the early rounds, hits the canvas, should have been counted out in the 5th round, gets off the canvas, does well. He even is the person coming forward toward the end of the fight.